What's going on, everybody? Master Coach and Education Director Aaron Guyett here on the Living.Fit show. And I have the incredible pleasure and honor to have a near and dear friend of mine, Elan Sudberg. But I think more importantly, so I get to have my friend on here, but what's cool about my friend Elan is he is the founder and owner of Alchemist Labs. He's also the CEO of Alchemist Labs. And Alchemist Labs, this is a little diverging from our normal topic. We're talking about fitness industry stuff and usually movement and things like that. Something that we don't tend to talk about a whole lot is supplements. We've done some nutrition stuff, and so some eating type shows and things like that with some really heavy hitters in that part. But we've never really done a deep dive or talked about supplements or the supplement industry or anything like that. And so that's a lion's share of what Alchemist Labs gets to do and does for that industry. And so without further ado, Elan, it's great to have you on the show. And I was just wondering, what got you into supplement testing?
Great question, Aaron. First, thank you for having me on the show. I'm eternally grateful for your friendship, guidance, mentorship, and then just this opportunity to be with you on the Living.Fit show. The answer to that question is my parents. My father was a chiropractor, acupuncturist, and nutritionist. My mother was a live blood cell analyst. So basically looked at your blood before and after certain nutritional stimuli to see how your blood reacted. Basically grew up in the nutritional industry before it was, I would say, even legal. I mean, acupuncture was not legal in New York, which is why my family moved from New York to California. Just the thought of it being illegal is crazy. So I grew up to natural product people in natural industry before the natural product industry was really coined. In laboratories, in doctor's offices. My dad made herbal tinctures in our garage. So my first job was basically chopping up roots and barks and mixing them. So I've never not been in this industry. That's what I like to tell folks.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I know I've had the pleasure of actually doing like a tour through the old lab and then now the new lab, which is night and day different. Something that was sort of a mainstay in all of that is you had like huge stores of plants and all sorts of things. And so I think to give a little bit more context, because obviously there's already some context with your parents, but to give a little, what is the purpose of having these storages of all these different herbs and plants and things like that? And what do you guys do with those?
Right. So to jump right to it, the FDA does regulate dietary supplements. Many folks from the get-go don't believe that. It's an unregulated industry that is false. It has been regulated for many, many years. Most recently, 12 years ago, they dropped GMPs, good manufacturing practices, on the industry to help self-regulate, made rules on how you should test, when you should test, with who you should test. And so we are a testing lab. And in order to say, yes, you have an orange, you and your brain has to know what an orange looks like. We go to the supermarket, we pick good strawberries because we have an idea of what good strawberries are. That makes us experts in strawberries. You don't have to run that through laboratory equipment because your nose, your eyes, if you want to be like one of those people, you taste one, don't like those, put it back. So that's an analytical test, is taste. We qualify strawberries. So in the laboratory testing, we don't taste things because we know too much about what else is in there. So we use equipment, but you have to have a strawberry to say yes to incoming strawberries. And in our industry, most of the stuff is either powdered or already in an extracted form. Similar to your coffee liquid in the morning, they would dry that and send us a dried version. So you can't say the dry brown powder is from coffee bean unless you have coffee beans. And so we have coffee beans and chamomile and St. John's wort and ginseng and gotu kola and all the herbs, about 2,000 of them species in the industry traded. We have about 20,000 specimens on site so that when we get incoming test samples, we have a really good statistical collection of what these things should be like. To then compare against incoming test samples. So they're control samples, basically.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's sort of like the old adage comparing apples to oranges, right? So you can't, right? If you have an apple and you're trying to compare it to an orange. It's just not going to work. You need an orange to compare it to an orange to say
Precisely.
how orange this orange is.
Right. And to take that further, I use the peach as an example. We can all go to certain big box retailers right now and get peaches out of season. They will be technically peaches. There might be another peach inside of it. There might be a peach that's this big and it might not rot on your countertop. Now, if all you compared your incoming peaches to that one amazing big box retailer whose name I won't name, peach, you would be doing a disservice because not all peaches are grown, created equally. So you want to have many peaches in your repertoire of peach controls. So that's why we have this massive room with 20,000 specimens of peaches as an example. We don't have 20,000 peaches. We have 20,000 accessions of 2,000 herbs, so that we know what a good peach is. And I've been to Georgia in peach season, and they are not what you find in the store shelves right now. They're magical peaches. Yeah. But not all peaches are grown, created, harvested equally, so you have to have many.
Yeah, I love that. And that obviously brings us right into any sort of supplementation or supplement. If it's natural, right? If it's naturally grown and then they do some sort of powder form of it or something like that, it could be high quality, low quality. It could be cut with something. Right. And in order to know that, you would actually have to have that comparison like you're talking about, and then know also how to test that. So what are some of the ways that you're able to pull some of these qualities from some of these supplements to know, yes, one, this is the actual supplement that they have, but then two, this is the quality. This is either a better version or a worse version of this. What are some of the things that you guys do?
So the FDA, I mentioned they dropped the GMPs. They said you should test. They didn't really go into great detail of how you should test and what methods, but they made it very clear that identity, purity, and potency are really critical. Identity is important because you need to know that you have the right starting material. So as I mentioned, powdered materials, we get material from all over the world in powdered form. We can all look at an orange and say this is an orange and know that it's not a grapefruit. Navel orange from other oranges, that gets a little bit trickier, but even those are easily distinguishable in their whole form. But the industry doesn't trade whole form material; they trade powder material. So identity of a green powder is different than identity of the green tea leaves or the yerba mate leaves or the chamomile leaves. So we deploy several methods for identity. The beautiful part is one is as old as this microscope back there. That's an actual real microscope from the 1800s, but microscopy goes back to the 1600s, I believe, and it's a technique that is still valid today to look at plants under the microscope and look at key cellular features to know if you have the right genus and species. Microscopy is also really good at finding things that are chemically inert, which equal sand, sawdust, maltodextrin. Various fillers are in a lot of products to add flow, but are not noted on the spec sheets. So people might be buying material that is, I'd say, cut or fortified with fillers when they don't know it. Microscopy can determine that. Back to identity, we use something called HPTLC. So it's high performance thin layer chromatography. I use the example of if you get a pen on a paper towel and you get that paper towel wet, the water will travel up the paper towel. And in the olden days, ink was made up of numerous colors, not just one. And so the inks would actually separate into different fractions of the original ink form. Kind of like you see in DNA, who's the killer, who's not the killer, these little bands, those are proteins. Plants have chemical in them and phytochemicals, and they also separate on more technologically advanced than paper towel lab stuff. And we make these chemical fingerprints, basically telling you that you do have chamomile flower or chamomile root or chamomile half cut with something else. That is required by law, by the FDA federal, and to do an identity test to make sure you have the right material. Next one, of course, is potency. So you've gotten to, yes, we have the right starting materials, but are they good? Because what's the point if they're not good? Now, good can be defined by many ways. You can give your loved one a red rose that smells great, and she or he will say, thank you for this beautiful rose. If you give them a dried rose, it is technically still rose. DNA testing will prove it is still a rose. It may not smell good. It may not look how they want it to be defined as good. So people define their goods, and we make sure they have the goods. So an example of that would be caffeine quantity in green tea, or polyphenols in one thing, or anthocyanins in another thing. So they set these numbers that we expect our raw materials to have. We will run those samples through HPLCs, which is similar technology, but separation science, but quantification. So we'll actually quantify the caffeine in the green tea and tell you that, yes, you do have green tea, and it is X% of caffeine, if that's what you're looking for. I should also share that one can trick that purity test, or the potency test, by putting caffeine on sawdust. If all you're looking at is proving your green tea is green tea by having caffeine, then I can trick you all day with other plants that have caffeine, or, as I mentioned, caffeine on an inert ingredient. It would pass the test if that's all you were looking for. So there's generally three legs to this quality stool. You have the identity, the potency, and then last but not least, and also as important, is purity. Metals, heavy metals, contaminants like pesticides and microbiological contaminants are all required by law by the FDA for everything chamomile to cannabis. And that's something we're actually launching this quarter and starting next year, which will be a huge splash to be able to do all three of those required tests for our industry. Historically, we've focused on identity and potency, but now the purity aspect is going to be launched early next year.
Nice. So now I'm curious, if somebody that's listening to this, maybe they're into our workouts or something like that, and then they're like, oh yeah, I'm taking supplements. I'd love to watch this interview, where they talk about supplements and the quality of supplements and things like that. And then they listen to it and they're like, man, I'm actually really interested in pursuing something like that. I love science, or I love, trying to figure out and discover things about, former living things or living things or whatever. So, or just getting into a lab, they're enthralled by that. What would be an education pathway or a way to get into something like this?
This is a good question. Let's get into something like the lab testing business, or just to learn more about what's in these products? I
think the lab testing business, to actually pursue a career, like, I want to go work for Élan at Alchemist Labs. What do I need to do?
First step is a chemistry degree. Unless you didn't want to be in the lab, then it'd be like a marketing degree or something like that. I would also advise, don't start a lab. Don't start a lab. It's hard. If I can go back in time, would I start a lab again? I don't know if the answer would be yes at this moment. I mean, I've had a great time. I'm having a great time. I've got amazing people in this industry who I call some of my closest friends. But the barrier to entrance is expensive. Lab equipment is expensive. I share the same equipment that Pfizer has in their laboratories, and they have a lot more money. So also staffing a lab is hard. It takes heavily paid people, and automation is great to reduce that, but also costs a lot of money to automate. So labs are hard, and the margins can be hard as well. It's all volume really, and there's space in our industry for more testing labs for sure, but it's a tough business to go in. And lastly, I would just say, and it's maybe something you've experienced in the training industry, is I compete with Goliaths. My competitors are multi-billion-dollar corporations, billion with a B. My very excitable annual revenue is a balance sheet error in theirs. So we're just the tiniest little thing in their radar. So that's another challenge, because they can compete on price for sport, just for fun, without really impacting anything here. But how you do it, you get a chemistry degree or a marketing degree, and you read up on the industry news. NutraIngredients is a great website that has really good information about all the products and how they're being made and tested and qualified in this industry. And then, of course, you can always attend trade shows. It was just at one Supply Side West in Las Vegas. Next March in Anaheim will be Expo West, which is open to the public. You can go there and purchase an educational package and sit down through every single seminar on every single product, or walk the floor and see all the new ingredients and new processing machines and robots and gel caps and tea extracts and everything you can imagine that'll end up in the store shelves a year from there. I think the trade shows are actually a pretty good way to jump in this industry. Just jump in and just to start exploring.
Yeah. And so I want to parse out and pull out the sort of Goliaths or the giants story. So we've had a couple of guests that have published just recently. So it'd probably be a few months or whatever ago when people are listening to this, where we talked about like post-traumatic growth and having really huge challenges. And I think a lot of people just think of those challenges as physical, like, oh, doing something really hard in the weight room, or doing something really hard, like a hell week, or a couple of weeks, for Navy SEAL training, or special forces, experiences, or indocs, or things like that. I think that's what a lot of people tend to think about. But there is this component where it's intelligence, psychological, social, emotional challenges as well. And something that I've been able to watch you sort of pursue and hit are these obstacles where, you're basically, little David and these huge Goliaths, like multiple of them, and you're fighting for your life, right? To just exist. And so I don't know if I know you've written a few articles about this and things like that, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I just think that that's such a helpful thing to talk about, and probably maybe the reason why you're like, I don't know if I would do this again, but I will. I mean, from the outside looking in, I mean, you've become such a more well thought out person, a more resilient person, a more resolute person in terms of values driven and purpose that's driving you, versus just kind of going with the flow, or leading a life of, following the path of least resistance. That's definitely not you when I think of Élan, or I think about the Alchemist. Right?
No, for sure. It's interesting. I think I try not to speak as though I knew all of this when I started, because I didn't, and I've never run a company that I'm running tomorrow. This is my first gig as being a CEO of anything or leading any company. So I'm learning as we go. But I say these things like, the space that the big Goliaths occupy is over here, and the space that the little labs occupy is over here. So it's almost like by them being so enormous, they make space around them. So you picture like a huge circle with another huge circle around it, where there's a little space between the circles. Sometimes that three circles makes kind of a little triangle, and that's where the other little labs exist. And I have the ability to be kind of a speedboat when they're an ocean liner. So while they carry more and they're way more powerful, and when they unload at the dock, they unload. And I have to refuel more frequently than they do. And I can go as long with journeys, but I am absolutely more nimble, and I can react to industry way faster. I have the ability to be, as a small company, way more personal with my client experience. As I mentioned, 75% of my Facebook friends are from the industry, and who I actually consider real friends. And we just actually got back from a trade show, first one in 2 years since the pandemic, in person in Las Vegas. And it was less people than normal, but it was just packed with just hugs and emotions of not seeing good friends, good people from a long time. And that's one of the things I think we do well, is we have this client experience that is impossible for Goliaths to have. So it's almost like I do the opposite of what they do. Whether they go big, I go small. When they go small, I go big. And I have the ability to do those things. And I can flip that tomorrow, whereas that would take 17 board meetings and a council and a resolution, and I'm already done with it. So I kind of use I guess it's the sort of the taekwondo of it. I use their energy and funnel it, and then move past that, or some version of that. Now I'll say it again. I didn't know this when I started. It's just something that I've learned to adapt or exist or evolve to survive in this. A lot of labs did exist when we first started, and there's only literally a handful of small ones left in our industry. They've either been gobbled up by the big ones, or they've just hung their flag because it's hard to survive. Mm-hmm. I've always been kind of a contrarian. So whatever the masses are doing, I'm doing sort of the opposite, louder. And that seems to work. And I also don't hesitate to tell it how it is, because I can, and no one's looking over me saying, hey, that's not our message. You need to temper that rhetoric. Unfortunately, I don't have anyone doing that for me.
Yeah. So if anybody has been watching my interviews, some of my best friends are people that, and it's not that they have anti-authority complexes, but they like to stand up. They have this deep sense of justice, and they like to stand up for the small guy. And they tend to be a bit contrarian. So like the Jeff DePatis or the Rick Alexanders, and now the Élan Sudbergs, right? So I have this attraction, and it's because that's kind of in my nature as well. And I think most entrepreneurs, when you dig into their souls, so to speak, right, you'll find some of that residing within them, right, in their brain or in their heart, or however you want to talk about that. So I would love to kind of switch gears and talk a little bit about, so how has, because you've now had Alchemist Labs through a bunch of different sort of life stages, if you will, right, or seasons. So how has Alchemist Labs affected your personal life? And then also, how has your personal life affected how you run Alchemist Labs?
It's a good question. I am one of the most fortunate people I know, in that I've had my wife, Michelle, next to my side for all this time. We met in high school. We were friends. I always thought she was cute until I became of age, which is around junior year. You know, boys and girls in high school are very different creatures in maturity. The girls show up in ninth grade and pretty much leave 12th grade looking around the same. Boys grow mustaches in that period of time and start to pretend to be men. So fortunately, we already liked each other a lot and fell in love junior year summer and started dating senior summer or senior year, and have been together ever since. It'll be 25 years this next year. So we have fortunately been able to evolve together. And so I never had to do this, start my career, put everything into it, and then go find a mate or a partner or whatever. And she equally had an amazing journey where she earned a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD all around the same time. I earned my bachelor's. That's how long it took me to get a bachelor's. She got several degrees in my time. So my story is that I've been very fortunate to have someone growing with me. I mean, she's just as much of an alchemite as I am. So a lot of understanding and forgiveness and just kind of compassion for what it is and what it was that I have been doing. Now, at the same time, watching her career develop and her get sucked into big Fortune 500 company culture and making a good salary and just kind of working. I was, I say fortunately now, but unfortunately experiencing the other end of that family life where you get gobbled up and you come home after 12 hours of work, you gobble up dinner, you get back to work at home, then you repeat. And being on the other end of that sad spouse, so to speak. I remember feeling that way, thinking I'd never want one to feel this way again. Also, I don't want my staff to feel this way. So it became a very early mission of mine for Alchemist that the company culture is really strong. Work-life balance was a phrase I learned about from her when she was getting her PhD that I then later saw was not in existence at any of the companies she worked for. Big companies, you know, again, paid well, cool benefits, cool trips, lots of fun, but terrible work-life balance. So through that, I've always been able to set the limits. Like I've denied success or slowed the success with efforts to maintain my relationship with my wife, Michelle. We now have a 6 and a 4-year-old, and it's even more important for me to be home with them so they know me. My father was a workaholic. We have a great relationship, but I remember, you know, the same thing, like where's dad? When's dad coming to come home? I'm sure my kids ask that question, and right now they probably don't know how good they have it that I am home until 9 a.m, and I do get home at 4. Now, as soon as I go to sleep, I'm back to it, you know, emailing and working, and it never ends, especially since I'm an owner. But for me, I've always put that really up front so that it doesn't ruin my life. But the fact is that, you know, as any founder, owner this long into it, that there's very little separation between the company and the person and the company. Mm-hmm. I am kind of Alchemist, and Alchemist is me for sure. I'm just very blessed or fortunate to have a spouse, a partner that appreciates that for what it is. And you know, if I were to be out in the dating field now, I couldn't even imagine trying to balance both. You'd fail at both, if anything, and be a very unhappy person. So again, I see luck, right time, right place, right high school, being a huge part of how I've been able to navigate what you've shared, you know, describe the 25 years of growth and ebbs and flows in businesses and catastrophic failures and successes all in the same time, and to be able to go home with the wife, to the partner that has been there since the beginning. Makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now for those of you watching, if you thought that I spoke really fast and loved science. Now you've met somebody who has one-upped me in speaking and in science. So, and that's probably another attractive factor for my relationship with you, and why I appreciate you so much. And you're brutally honest, autistically honest, as I heard a comedian once say. And I love that about you. And I wish that there was more humans like that. I think we tend to try to tiptoe around people, but the problem with that is that we never fully get to embrace one another unless we can be autistically honest with each other. So, right. Yeah, I think that was a Bert Kreischer line.
Right. I don't know where the censorship is on this show, so I apologize in advance. But there was an MMA fighter long ago, and you get ready for that bleep button. But he had a shirt he put on after he won, and it said, "Fuck me?" ? Fuck you, all capitals. And I was raised by New Yorkers, and that's this sort of the New York attitude is like, okay, we're all cool, but we're going to do this. We're going to do it. And sort of back to the David and Goliath thing, I've always been a shorter person, never a huge person on this earth, strong but small. And so I have this sort of attitude, like I will fight the biggest guy in the bar if I need to, because if I lose, well, he's the biggest guy in the bar. Right. So of course, at least I fought him. And if I win, well, he's the biggest guy in the bar. So I have win-win. I can lose or win, and I'm going to win either way. He's going to look like a jerk, and I'm going to look like either champion either way. So I feel the same way for my industry. I have tenacity through the roof, and I'm going to fight the big labs as best I can. If I lose, at least I tried. If I win, then, we'll keep going for other battles.
Yeah, I love that. And so I want to now kind of move into, and you don't have to talk about like present day fitness or anything like that. But I know we had a lot of back and forth, and we talked a lot about, fitness and physical health and nutrition and sleep and, all of the things that encompass this sort of fitness understanding. And then also your performance as a CEO and a performance as a company, and being able to lead a company and being able to pursue these challenges and resilience. So or does your physical health and fitness play a role in that? And if so, what have you noticed? And obviously this is anecdotally, but what have you noticed, and how has that either improved or hurt or helped or whatever?
Yeah. So I started the company with my father at 17, was, busy with college and trying to get a degree and trying to keep the company going till, we're still done with college. But when I finished college, I realized I was no longer as physically fit as I wanted to be, and remember wanting to go back to, getting fit again and be able to do more pull-ups than anyone around me sort of situation. Met our common friend Guyett and started training with him for almost 10 years, sometimes twice a day for 5 days a week. And then switched to you at the end of that 10 years, I think, for another several years. And I very much so owe a lot of my sanity to the two of you gentlemen, and the fitness that you pushed me to endure. It's an endurance race business. It's not a sprint. I'm not starting a startup with some money and we have 5 years to, build it to X and Y and sell it. This is a long-term thing. And there's been a lot of massive challenges that I remember feeling the same way I do at work that I did at the end of that lunge matrix with a heavy bag or whatever it is, or running through the sands with a weight vest on, whatever you guys had me do. So I made it through many, very hard years of just existence, because I think I owe a lot of it to the push that I had from you two physical trainers and friends of mine that showed me that you can break through the I want to quit zone and push hard, and then find a space where you're just maintaining. And look, just maintaining is not good, but when you're trying to get through whatever battle it is, whether, and I speak ignorantly because I'm not in any sort of military, but whether it's on the battlefield or it's in the court or it's at home, just pushing through your uncomfort zone was taught to me by you and by Jaya in the physical realm. And then now it's 6:59, I'm going to go to work, and nothing could bother me. Not an HR issue, not a bank issue, not a customer issue. I've already pushed past my extreme levels physically and mentally. Now I come here, it's physical. It's mental. There's nothing physical about this job. I sit in this chair and I can type really fast, and there's no saber-toothed tiger trying to get me like there was the timer on the lunge matrix, in my head at least. So, but I tuned this brain so that I can handle those types of things. And then kids happen, and trying to be a great husband and great father, I've let go of the gym stuff quite too much, and I intend to get back now that they're a little older. And I've been saying that for a year, but I need to get back to that because the fact is, as you know, entrepreneurship is never ending. Yeah. It's not that we've reached some achievement place. We have gotten to a great place in this company, but I believe in never getting comfortable. Ever. The competition is always coming, and you always have to be prepared to get uncomfortable and stay uncomfortable. And, if you can't go to hot yoga and quit because it's just too hot and sweaty and uncomfortable, then you'll never start and run a business. Like, you need to just go there and physically push your physical body beyond its capacity to show what your brain can actually tell this body to do. And the same thing I think goes for work. So for me, physical fitness was really critical. And that was also kind of fun because I was testing some of the products that I was hearing about at the gym or out in the field. I knew those brands, knew the owners of those companies, knew the ingredients. Sometimes I knew the ingredients too well that I wouldn't take certain products as an example. But it was fun to be part of, see the products manufactured, marketed, test them, use them at the gym, and or tell friends to or not to use them at the gym.
Yeah, and so I think this is a perfect time to ask the final question. But before I do, I think there's a few things that probably the listener wants to know, whether you're a trainer or you're, working out to Marcus's, double gains kettlebell workouts or something like that, right? One of our workouts. I'm sure that everybody is absolutely on the edge of their seat wondering which supplements I should not take or which supplements I should take. And I'm sure there might be some NDAs going on and things like that, but whatever you're allowed to share, if you're allowed to share, like pull back the curtain, so to speak, and say, I would pursue maybe these or that or this, or don't do this or whatever.
No, I'm not going to give exact brands because that would get me in trouble, and I don't have enough legal money to get out of trouble. So, but what I do know is that quality costs money, and garbage in, garbage out. So those are kind of two cliches. What I believe you should look for in a supplement is data, research backing the ingredients, and not like N of 3 people that they did in their hometown garage. That's not to say startups are not good. Startups are some of the best companies on the whole planet. There are also some mega companies that actually produce really great products. But data. And so I mentioned the industry, federal guidelines require you to test. Let's just pretend everyone is listening to federal guidelines, which I know is not the case. Let's pretend they're all doing it right, which I know is not the case. If they're doing it and they're doing it right, then there's nothing to hide. And I know companies that are in our customer base that are spending millions on quality testing, millions every year on quality tests, make sure that the right product, it's the right potency, it doesn't have any arsenic and lead and salmonella in it, all these things that are required by law. And then they go above and beyond. They do that again in the finished product, and they don't say a single word about it to their customers. There's beginning to be brands that are telling that tale because they realize they've been hiding this marketing campaign that they have been paying for all these years. It's called quality. And one of my most recent platforms is to basically empower brands to see quality as a superpower. Because one, their competitors are not doing it. And if they are, they're not doing it right. And they're doing it and they're doing it right. So why not shout about it from the mountaintops? So where I'm going with this is look for websites that have a page devoted to the quality. Look for brands that show the testing that they're doing behind their ingredients, behind the finished product. Look for brands that are using ingredients that have been clinically studied, because they do exist. And then take it a step further, look for brands who are bragging about their testing labs, because that's, again, part of this marketing campaign that is not being sort of realized by 90-something% of this industry. And if they're doing it and they're doing it right, there's no reason why they shouldn't share it with the whole world, because their competitors aren't. And I think my strong belief is that the consumers want to know more about what they're taking today than they did ever before. Beyond their even ability to understand what it is the hell they're looking at on a certificate of analysis, they want to know it exists or is there. So without going into great details of saying specific brands, I would say look for transparency in the quality story on their websites. Some of them are going to go so far that you can actually type in a lot number on the website and see all the test reports behind that product. They all have it. There's no reason to share. There's some guy who hasn't put it on the website yet, and that's not an expensive feature. So they should be shouting about their quality from the mountaintops, and there will be brands that are doing that, and some already are. So let me say also that if it's too good to be true, it's probably not true.
Yeah.
So claims are tough in this industry. We're not the pharmaceutical industry. We can't make drug claims, cure claims, prevent claims. But there are brands out there that are doing clinical studies and have some claims that can be made. But I would avoid the ones that are making big claims because it's probably illegal. And there are companies out there that will, show up, make a big splash, split, change names, go do something else after they get fined by the FTC and FDA. So if it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true.
So what you're saying is if I take protein today, I'm not going to be a huge muscle-bound freak tomorrow.
That's probably true. Yes. Yeah, protein by itself, we know will not do that. There's a whole repertoire of stuff that is required to build those gains for sure. But I think ultimately quality costs money, and if you're not willing to pay for quality products, and it costs $14 at one store and $45 at the other store, there's a reason. They cut corners. Their ingredients are garbage. They didn't pay for the lab testing. It's a fly-by-night situation. And here's the ultimate thing. The worst thing that happens in the dietary supplement industry is that it doesn't work. More people die every day for the FDA-approved pharmaceutical drugs. FDA-approved pharmaceutical drugs kill more people per day than the dietary supplement has in 25 years.
Wow.
I mean, now we're not dealing with drugs. We're dealing with chamomile compared to a chemical that was derived and synthesized. But still, FDA-approved drugs are killing people every day at a rate way magnitudes higher than the herbs and supplements that are in this industry. So I'll say it again, the worst thing that generally happens is that it doesn't work as effectively because it was lesser quality than what it touted to be. Mm-hmm. There's been some issues here and there. There's so few far in between that anyone who says supplements are not regulated is straight up stupid and misinformed. And I'll say that you can quote me on that one. And just look for quality. Quality should be told and shared, because if it's not, there's some stupid reason they're hiding it.
Yeah. And so then what are, if you don't mind sharing, and if this is too personal, you just tell me, F me, F you. But yeah, so what are some of the supplements that you take, and then what would be the reasons behind that? Obviously, brand exclusive. You don't have to talk about the brand, but just I take this and this is why.
I have a huge list, and I'm going to try to remember all of them, but I think one of the most important ones is a probiotic. I'd start with you, if you had to take one, probiotic, because probiotics help whatever you're putting in your mouth get absorbed correctly. If your gut is unhealthy, it doesn't matter the quality of food you're taking, doesn't matter organic or not, or free range or blah, 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 blah. It's not going to get absorbed and digested. That includes your vitamins and your minerals and your supplements. So probiotics are really critical. The average gut of Americans is pretty unhealthy, poisoned with drugs, poisoned with hormones, poisoned with other things their whole lives. So probiotics are, I think, are number one. I think fish oils are really critical too for eye health, brain health, cellular health, nerve health. So in that order, I would go probiotics, a fish oil, or like an omega product. There's a lot of sources for omegas now. It could be krill or algal or fish. And of course, you want to consider, are they sustainably harvested? Are they organic? And all these other important considerations. But probiotics, an omega product, and then a multivitamin for men or women, whatever category you are, because we don't eat enough nutrients in our one bowl of salad every 2 days to get the actual amount of nutrients you really need. I mean, scurvy is one clear example of what happens when you don't have vitamin C. And people think, well, I don't take vitamins, I'm healthy. They're not healthy. They got bumps in the back of their arms because they have vitamin deficiencies, or they don't even realize that they have bone loss, or things you find out when you're later in age that you could have helped. The fact is, no one eats healthy enough to not take a supplement. And then you can get into other things like inflammation is another issue of the American diet. Drugs, hormones, all these other various factors have us inflamed. And so, achy joints, arthritis, rheumatoid, these are the type of things that kind of show up. Even your gut inflammation, back to that absorption situation. If your gut's not healthy, you're not going to absorb. So a turmeric product is, I think, a really good one. Hemp and CBD have some options for that as well for inflammation. The next ones I take, really considering the situation we're all in right now, with COVID and immunity being quite important, and sitting here in front of several monitors all day, not seeing the sun. So vitamin D and zinc are really critical. We're finding out there's a lot of impressive data coming back on how important vitamin D is just in general health, but also in fighting and preventing COVID. And that's not me endorsing them for that, but I'm saying there's a lot of really good data out there that supports, that's a key word, that type of health. And then I take a whole slew of tinctures, ashwagandha, echinacea, elderberry. I take some mental health ones as well, passion flower. I'm a huge fan of cannabis as a medicinal herb as well. If I wanted to pick alcohol over cannabis, cannabis will win in so many arguments in my book, and I would go to the mat on anyone on those two. Choose one, choose a vice, and I'll pick a healthier one. And that's cannabis. Sorry, alcohol industry. You won't be endorsing me. I will not be endorsing you either. So, but those are the
they got a lot
ones.
of followers. I think they're doing all right.
They're fine. Yeah, they'll be all right. I was just in Las Vegas for a week, and it was very clearly evident that alcohol is a very popular drug over other things. But those are the main ones I would say. I'm probably forgetting a few, but probiotics, omegas, multis, real critical just for basic stuff. Mm-hmm. And then mental health is another issue as well. Sleeping is a massive problem for a lot of people, and I'm not a huge fan of sleeping. I don't have any problem sleeping. I can fall asleep on this desk right now if I needed to, but some people have trouble sleeping, which I'm surprised about. I don't know how that happens. Melatonin is key. CBD is a key for those two things. Sleep is very important for restoration and health. And what else? And of course, there's men's and women's issues, which I'm not in that category that I'm aware of yet. So there's a whole slew of botanicals and supplements we can take for those type of things, mm-hmm. which also probably goes into mental health ultimately as well. But I would reiterate probiotics, omegas, multiples, and then take care of your immune system, especially right now, regardless of where you are and vaccines or not, or mainstream medicine or not. The data is showing that more people are taking supplements than ever before right now in the immune health. People who took them are taking more. People who never took them before are saying, maybe I want to take some zinc and elderberry and vitamin D just because it's, might help me get through this whole situation healthier.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Julia Glanz, she's our resident registered dietitian, the director of nutrition with Living.Fit. And she would agree. Obviously, she's like, make sure you're eating right, make sure you're sleeping, make sure you're doing all the big rock things. But then, of course, you're going to probably have some deficiencies. And so be able to fill those. She also is a big proponent of being able to test. And now, obviously, you're not a doctor that's doing human testing. You're a scientist that's doing testing of the supplement. So, that's your perspective on that. But then she would say, hey, go get a test, find out what you're deficient in, and then you can go supplement for that deficiency, which obviously just makes a whole ton of sense. So we could go on and on. We're going to make sure that Julia Glanz, Marcus Martinez, Tony Reyes, our creative director, all take a trip out to Alchemist Labs. We're going to do a whole thing on Alchemist Labs because like you said, there's more people taking supplements than ever before. Our followers, our listeners, our subscribers should, be able to know the very best information regarding the supplement industry. And I could think of not a better person nor a better place than you, Élan, and Alchemist Labs. So we'll look forward to that opportunity. And I'm sure we'll be able to talk to, we didn't even get into, CBD and cannabis and all of those topics. And then even psilocybin, which we've had Emily Schramm on before, and we talked about some of the effects of that. And so I'm sure there is another show or two or three down the road that we'll look forward to. So we ask this of all of our guests, and it's, what is Living.Fit to you?
So first, thank you again. I can't wait for the next episode and so much more to talk about. Like you said, this could be a 3-hour show. Living.Fit to me is a destination of data from real sources, sort of from the trenches, so to speak, from the gym, just honest, no bullshit data. And I listened to a few of the shows or watched a few of the shows, and the people you have on there, I want to know feel worthy. As you mentioned, it's more of the fitness community and folks like that. And I'm the nerd in the lab who pretends to be a fitness guy. But it's just the true source of good data on what's happening right now in the fitness industry and now, nutrition. And then it's just a nice place to see you, someone who I admire and call a good friend and a mentor on this universe of craziness. So I think it's a hugely valuable destination to get information. There's a lot of places to go get data, and this one I feel was one of the best. So that's what Living.Fit means to me.
Well, thank you so much again, Alon. It was a pleasure as per usual. I always enjoy our conversations and I look forward to the next one, even if it's not recorded for the Living Fit show. I look forward to the next one. And yeah, thanks again.
My pleasure. Thanks for the honor.